Now, the administration of value-added tax is the latest bone of contention between the federal government and some states. Rivers State Governor Nzeakor had sued the federal government over the sharing formula of revenue made from V.A.T, that's the value-added tax, amongst the 36 states of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory. Governor Nzeakor lamented the fact that states like Kano, which generate a smaller amount of V.A.T, got larger shares than his state, which generates more V.A.T. Lagos State government joined Rivers State in the suit, and a high court in Rivers ruled in their favor. But the Federal Inland Revenue Service, that's the FIRS, filed for an appeal in Abuja, and the appellate court ruled that status quo on V.A.T collection and sharing be maintained until it gives its ruling. Despite this directive from the appeal court, Rivers and Lagos State governments have gone ahead to pass bills that empowers them to collect V.A.T generated in their states. Joining me now is lawyer and public affairs analyst, Fred Nzeakor. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
Now, let's begin by understanding the position of the law with regards to V.A.T collection, because it seems that is where the crux of the matter is.
Well, the law has shifted with the judgment given by the High Court in Rivers State. It has adjusted the law. Now, before that High Court, V.A.T was collected by federal government, by federal government agency, Federal Inland Revenue Service, and shared among the 3 tiers of government, federal, state, and local, in a sharing formula which the states have been kicking against. And this is not the first time that this issue is coming before the courts.
Absolutely.
Yes, this is not the first time. It has been an ongoing issue since the introduction of V.A.T in 1993. As a matter of fact, V.A.T came to take over from the sales tax, yes, more or less. So the governments have been going to court asking that this V.A.T law should not be sustained. But it has been coming in various dimensions. The dimensions have been, the formal issues in court had been, does the state, or rather the federal government, have the authority to collect V.A.T?
Right. Because
of the fact that the provision of V.A.T is not under the exclusive list in the Constitution.
Right.
It is not under the exclusive list, neither is it in clearly stated in the concurrent list. So it has been left to be understood to be in the residual list. And then the state governments felt that since it is in the residual list, that they should be able to delve into that. And the argument has also been that sales tax has been location based, because you cannot consume a product in Lagos and you're paying the tax in Kano. You cannot consume a product in Ogun State, and the effect of the tax you paid on that consumption is felt in Kebbi.
Right.
So that has been the argument, that because this is location, geographically, situation based, it has to be handled by the states. The argument has been on and on until this recent judgment that came from Rivers State. The confusion that the judgment has brought in the eye of many interpreters is the fact that the Court of Appeal has said, let status quo ante bellum be maintained.
Yes.
The question is, the status quo has shifted. The status quo before they approached the High Court, the High Court, right, before the matter became an issue before the High Court, was that federal government through FIRS was collecting V.A.T.
Yeah.
The status quo after the matter has been decided by the judge, by the court of the High Court in Rivers, is that the federal government should not collect V.A.T anymore, in which case it is the state. Now the matter has shifted to Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal says let status quo be maintained. The question now is, which status quo?
Yes.
Before the High Court or before the Court of Appeal? But I feel that the Court of Appeal should not be bothered with what went on in the High Court. They should be bothered with, or rather, what went on before the matter went to High Court. They should bother with what the status is as at the time the matter was brought before them.
Right. Why so?
What's the situation as at the time the matter was brought before them?
Why? Why should they consider
it? It should be so because Assuming the matter originated from magistrate court, for example.
Okay.
Yes, because the matter can start from magistrate court and move up to Supreme Court. Would you now, at the Court of Appeal level, at the appellate level, say, let status quo ante be maintained before we ever went to magistrate court? And secondly, the second logic to it, because we want to, because the matter is in the court now, we don't want to be too legalistic. Let's be logistic and use common sense approach. Now that the matter has gone through the gamut of trial and of hearing, the rest of them not trial, hearing in the High Court, and somebody has won. In that case, Rivers State, Lagos State, and perhaps other states. If you now say, at the very moment the judgment has been given, those who have been, the judgment have favored, should begin to harvest the fruit of the judgment.
Really?
Yes. Of course, that is what the law says. Once judgment is given, unless there is a stay of execution. And then appeal does not mean stay of execution.
All right.
What the court may have announced, the Court of Appeal, is a stay of execution pending appeal, full determination of the matter on appeal. But if the court says maintain status quo, there's a confusion there. Because the status quo has shifted from prior to the High Court to prior to the Court of Appeal. And I believe that what should worry the Court of Appeal more is what has come before them and not what went before the High Court. Meanwhile, if you went back to what went before the High Court, that means the fruit of that judgment given by the High Court will be harvested by the loser. Right. The loser in this case is federal government, FIRS. So if you want the status quo ante bellum to be maintained before the matter ever become actionable in the High Court, then the one who will harvest the fruit of the judgment so far will now be the Federal Inland Revenue Service. That will now rubbish everything that was done at the High Court. But the law should not operate like that.
Right. Because
the very moment a judge has made pronouncement, you begin to harvest the fruit of that pronouncement until there is a counter pronouncement by an appellate court. So far as I am concerned, the status quo ante that should be maintained is the status quo before the matter came before the Court of Appeal.
Right.
In this case, the state should start harvesting the fruit of the judgment which they have won, until the Court of Appeal says either reaffirms or negates such judgment.
So what Lagos State is doing in terms of passing the bill into law is in the right direction, as well as Lagos State.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because they have the backing of the law. They have the pronouncement of the court. Unless we want to mess our courts up and turn our courts to something else. So they are very, very correct. Very moment the Court of Appeal has said no, it is Federal Inland Revenue Service that's continue, then whatever Lagos State has put in place will now crumble, because we will now revert back to the former old order. In this case, old order, not status quo. The status quo as of today has shifted. The status quo is not a permanent thing, it shifts according to the dynamics of the law. The dynamics of the law has made it such that now it is Lagos State, Rivers State, other states harvest the fruit of the judgment until we say otherwise. And if eventually the Court of Appeal has affirmed that judgment, then they will, FIRS still have an option to go to Supreme Court.
Which is what the federal government is looking at.
Then, of course, the matter will obviously ultimately get to Supreme Court. All right? Obviously, because if Court of Appeal nullifies this judgment, the states will go to Supreme Court. If the Court of Appeal affirms this judgment, FIRS will go to Supreme Court. And the status quo keeps shifting. At any point a court makes pronouncement, it should be obeyed unless a stay is issued by a superior court.
Now, the government, the presidency, if you look at the papers this morning, has said that they will respect the verdict of the court on this value-added tax with regards to the Supreme Court, because you just mentioned something about respecting the decisions of the courts. What do you see playing out? Because you had talked about the fact that it had shifted, status quo had shifted,
Yes.
but yet we still see the FIRS challenging that.
FIRS can challenge that in court and not challenge that by taking laws into their hands. If after that judgment of the High Court in Rivers State, FIRS still goes ahead to issue orders to collect VAT, they are collecting VAT in breach of the pronouncement of the court. So if they continue to do that, they will be brought before the court for contempt. Yeah, because what they are doing is taking laws into their hands. And it is not expected that such a federal agency will take laws into their hands. They should obey the court, approach the appellate court. If they win there, then hooray. If they don't, they're also free to approach the Supreme Court. But as far as the law is concerned, and for the sanity of the society, every court order must be obeyed.
Right. Now, there are those who believe that this process, the impasse between the the FIRS rather, and the states is a process that is kickstarting a fiscal federalism. I wonder if that is what you see it as.
Well, I don't see it as kickstarting the process of fiscal federalism. I see it as a process of angling for revenue. Because take for example, Lagos State contributed over 400 billion, about 408 billion naira into the VAT, totally VAT collected. And if eventually, that is what last year, in fact, 3 years back to back, it has been about 408, 419, 420 something billion every year, the contribution. But what they earn as their share after sharing the VAT proceeds is in the neighborhood of 100 and something billion. Yeah. So invariably, Lagos State is losing, so in quote, over 300 billion under this arrangement. So why wouldn't you think that Lagos State would like to be collecting the VAT by themselves? And other states, that is why some other states, especially some states in the north, felt that, oh, we'll go with Federal Inland Revenue Service collecting the VAT. Whereas some other states who are, in quote, are losing, will feel that this is situation specific and we should be the ones collecting the VAT. So it is all about scramble for revenue sharing and scramble for increased revenue generation. And some people will argue that you should allow states to generate their revenue. If that is piecemeal approach to fiscal federalism, this is more or less not a very far-reaching one, because there are so many aspects of fiscal federalism that we have to also look into. Stamp duties, capital gains tax, and the rest of them. All these
they have also challenged.
Yes, they should challenge. They should challenge because I mean it does not make sense in any way, and that is why most times you say that federal government at the center is so heavy. The center is so heavy, and the states that are supposed to have money for development are very light. Yes, you can begin to argue that even the ones that come to them are mismanaged, but what are the ones that go to federal? And why would everything be collected at the federal? And you start sharing under Babiala's structure. Well, I mean, that should not be. If we want to develop this country and in the line and the trajectory of structured environment, we should take a holistic approach to these issues and not the one that we fight every time. We carve it out, we keep, we fight again, we carve another one out, we keep. There are so many aspects that have to do with true fiscal federalism that we're talking about. But this is, if some people feel that this is part of it, I think it's
isn't it part of it? To get your own position.
I think it is in order.
All right. Now, you mentioned something that I'd want for you to really harp on. You mentioned that some of the monies these states get in terms of the monies being shared to them, that some of them mismanage it. And I'm wondering if you think that when they begin to, collect these taxes by themselves, they'll be able to judiciously use this money in the development of this.
No, the challenge of judicious utilization of funds is a national problem. it does not lie only with the states, because even the federal government...
But at least let's begin from there. Seeing they are the one angling for
even
this.
the federal government that have been collecting this VAT since 1993, what has been the story about their management of the
construction
of
of roads and other infrastructure and all of it?
Don't states construct roads? Don't they provide other infrastructure? What we're looking at is what is the level and the quantum of mismanagement that is prevalent in the society at state, federal, and local. Every tier of government has been accused of not managing our resources well. And it is easy for governors to say we don't have enough, that the federal government collects large chunk, that when we go to share money, they collect 51% of all federally collected revenue, 51%, and then they leave for about 49% to be shared between us and the local government. And then with this, the argument as well, and that is why the governors will very easily pocket the local government, so that they say that helps them to show up their own revenue, and that they, in many aspects where they can generate revenue internally, they are tied by the provisions of the law.
Right.
All right. Take for example the inland water resources, where the water resources of the country lies in the hands of the federal government.
Exclusively.
And then yes, under the exclusively. So
yes.
so even when you have a state like Lagos, that is a state of aquatic splendor, they have very little to do with their waterways and the rest of them. The same thing has been the problem with other states. So if this is restructuring by piecemeal, my only worry is that it will take a very long time before we get to where we are going. But as far as I'm concerned, this is a step in the right direction.
So if we are to get there as quickly as possible,
yes.
now that there are challenging issues,
yes.
certain issues such
yes.
as this, what more would you want to see from the governors?
Accountability, nothing more. What else are we asking from every government official and every government and everybody in authority? Accountability. Let the money be used for the purposes for which they are budgeted. Let the money be used for development of the people. But let the money be used to service the people. Service the people in all respect: health, education, infrastructure, and every aspect of life, so that the standard of living of our people should be shored up. It does not mean that when the money comes to state that all will be frittered away. No. And it does also not mean that if you leave the money in the hands of federal government, the money will be well managed.
Right.
We will continue to agitate and ask and put in place mechanisms that will throw up genuine people with zeal to serve during the process of election, so that when this money comes, whether it goes to federal or it goes to state or even local government, the money will be well utilized. Yes, the argument can be, oh, when the money is so large in the hands of the state government, they will mismanage them. What happens at the federal level when where the money is so large? Are they doing as much as they can do? If you say so, and I'll ask you, why are doctors on strike?
Right.
And I'll ask you, why is ASU always kicking? And I'll ask you, why is labor up to today minimum wage cannot be paid? And I'll ask you, why are our missions abroad having challenges of even paying their staff and even paying their rent? So there are so many problems bedefiling.
Perhaps this is why some persons said a political solution to this impasse might be the way out.
Well, the political solution means let's go to the table and talk about restructuring. Yes, talk about true fiscal federalism. That's political solution. And then let's have rich federation. Let's have a system where the states will support the federal and not the federal supporting the states. It shouldn't. A child grows by crawling to walking to running.
Absolutely.
You don't just start running and then you walk and crawl. Because that seems to be what is happening, and that's why things seem not to be working in Nigeria. The local should support the state should support the federal. So the power should start from the grassroots, from the base, and then move up. It should be a pyramid and not an inverted triangle, right? That we have today, where, like Reuters Economist said, is a Washoko Federation, big head, small body, and tiny legs. I mean, that is what we have today. But we should have a robust federation where the center is maintained by the states. And when we talk about issue of through fiscal federalism and restructuring. I mean, of course, Veronica, you know, is a one-day topic.
Absolutely. Let's leave the conversation there now. Lawyer and public affairs analyst Fred Nzeakor, thank you so much for your time.
Many thanks.